today we're going to have a little fun. So we're going to try to introduce some New Mexico wines, and I'm going to give you a disclaimer straight up front. This is not scientific. So anything you like, you should drink. Anything you enjoy, you should drink. The only thing I'll try to do is introduce some background for each of the wines and give some guidelines that have worked for most people in the past as far as pairing these wines with different foods. Okay? And then with that in mind, you should be able to enjoy these wines over the holidays with your friends and family. Let's start with just introducing the wines, all possibly good friends of yours to come. So the first wine is a sparkling wine. It's kind of a flagship wine of Gruet Sparkling House here in Albuquerque. The Gruet family started the company in the 1980s here in New Mexico. And this is their flagship Brut sparkling wine. Brut is probably towards the low end of the middle of the sweetness level for sparkling wine. It has mostly Chardonnay in it with possibly a bit of Pinot Noir as it goes. That's how this wine has traditionally been made. Just know that sparkling wine works pretty well as an aperitif. It can work with salted nuts, even something as simple as potato chips. This particular wine will be somewhat crisp in acidity, and so it would also go good with some introductory hors d'oeuvres that may have some dairy product associated with them. Okay, so how to open this? Quite easy. You might tear off the foil, and we can do that, but it would kind of take up some video time, so we won't get into it. But the main point about opening a sparkling wine after you've chilled it to the proper temperature is to keep your thumb over the top of the cage and cork. And then after the cage is loosened, you will simply hold on to the cork and turn the bottle. Okay? You don't turn the cork, that might heat up a little bit and induce it to gush. So once that is eased out of the bottle, keep that bottle at a 45-degree angle, and it allows that thing to come to equilibrium. There's several atmospheres of pressure in there, and be sure you always point that away from anybody because it can come out under pressure and disturb your friends. So anyway, that's how to open that sparkling wine. You may want to throw a dish towel over your hand as you're doing that. Okay? So that's the sparkling wine. The next wine in our lineup is this Gewürztraminer, and it has a fanciful name. It's called Girls Are Meaner. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is a quite catchy name. You'll notice on this label as well that there's no alcohol content, but it does have the word table wine, meaning it's something less than 14% alcohol according to the TTB, and that's a U.S. regulation. Okay, so if it says table wine, no vintage, and it doesn't give an alcohol content, you can rest assured that it's something less than 14% alcohol. Now, Gewürztraminer, typically in a lot of wine write-ups, is listed as being a spicy wine. That may or may not be true, but don't limit it to spiciness. It has floral notes, it has fruity notes, and it typically pairs well with, I found, with holiday turkey. So you might want to try this one on the first course or with a poultry dish. Okay? And I think this wine is from Wines of the San Juan up near Farmington. So that's also a New Mexico wine from the northwest corner of the state. Our next wine is Sangiovese, and it's from the Luna Rosa Winery and Vineyard near Deming, New Mexico. This is a family operation of Marco. Paulo is the father, Marco is the son, and this place has been in business since the 1980s. And this is a varietal wine, Sangiovese, and it's somewhat finished in a somewhat light style. So this would be next in our lineup of wines. So we're going from very light to next to a little bit more. We're jumping up to reds here with a little bit of tannic content and acidity. Now, Sangiovese will typically have more acid than other reds, so keep that in mind as you're pairing it. Next up is our Sheehan Winery here in Albuquerque, and this is a hybrid wine called Chamberson. Now, Chamberson is a hybrid grape with pretty much an unknown lineage. So it was developed in the early 1950s, but it wasn't released to the early 60s. Now, the French, if you were to talk to a bunch of French vignerons or vintners or winemakers, they would never much admit to having Chamberson in their lineup. But rest assured, there's a couple thousand acres of Chamberson grown in France, and the reason being, it's an easy grape to grow, it's a heavy cropper, and it adds a lot of color to different wine blends. So it's used as a blender in France, but in this country, in the United States, and in New Mexico, it does well on its own. When we open this wine, you'll notice that it is purple in hue, and that's one of the signature tells that this is a hybrid grape and not a Vitis vinifera or typically European wine grape. Our next wine up is from Casa Rodena here in Albuquerque. And this is a blend, but it features the Spanish grape Tempranillo. Tempranillo comes from the word tempura. That means early. Temprano is early. So tempura is kind of like fried foods, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I tried. Okay. You can tell I rehearsed it. Oh, jeez. She always uses these things to blackmail me. Like, you said what? Okay. Tell me, is it good? We're still good. You can cut that out. Okay, so this is Casa Rodena, and 1629 is a prophetic year. That's the year that the first vineyard, probably, of European wine grapes was established here in New Mexico near the current, the modern-day town of Socorro. So there we go. This is Tempranillo. This will be our heaviest red today. And notice that I've gone from light to heavy, ending here. And that's pretty much, that's a good guideline to how to match it with food. Go from light food, less intensity, to heavier foods, more fat, more intensity. That's what the wine should do, too. It should mimic that. Okay, so this blend is Tempranillo, Syrah, and Cabernet Sauvignon. All right, and it does have some age on it. It's a 2017, and a rule of thumb there on red wine, it should be at least 3 years old before you drink it. Now, in modern times here recently, that's been somewhat altered, but traditionally we would have a red wine that was a minimum of 3 years old before we opened it and consumed it. And then we'll finish with a dessert wine, which is a late harvest Riesling from Vivac Winery near Taos. The Padberg brothers, Jesse and Chris, make this wine out of Riesling that was actually grown near Velarde at the Abbott family vineyard there. And that vineyard is over 5,000 feet in elevation. And that works to the grapes and the grape grower's advantage because it offers high, intense sunlight and cool nights with nice warm days. And that allows the grape as it ripens to retain its acidity but still develop sugar. And when it says late harvest, it's somewhat of a descriptor that these grapes were left to hang on the vine and possibly raisin a bit, and that concentrates the sugar while retaining acidity. So this wine, although very sweet, somewhat unctuous in its mouthfeel, will still have this nice acidity that keeps it from being cloying, especially if you were to pair it with a nice dessert such as something like a cheesecake, possibly. Okay. The rule of thumb on dessert wines, the dessert wine should be sweeter than the dessert. Okay. Remember that, sweeter than the dessert. All right, so those are the wines that we will taste today. Okay, before we do some pouring, let's introduce a few references that I've used to inform myself that possibly you might be interested in as far as learning some more about these different wines and how to enjoy them. One of the best books I found recently, and you may have seen the website, is Wine Folly by Madeline Puckett. And it's a great book, especially if you're like me and you don't like to spend a lot of time reading and you want to get right to the facts of the matter and you like cartoons. This is a great book for that will illustrate the different grapes that are available to you and how to taste. So check out Wine Folly by Madeline Puckett. The other one that is kind of a standard reference over the years by a renowned wine expert is Oz Clarke's Grapes and Wines. And, of course, Mr. Clarke has a lot of information, a lot of background, both about the viticulture, the winemaking, and how to taste and enjoy each of those grapes. For a more intellectual approach to the whole endeavor, including formal sensory analysis, this is the University Wine Course by Marion Baldy, and it's a great book if you want to really get off in the weeds about how to assess and taste and enjoy wine. Okay? So those three references make up most of my comments today, or inform them. But one little handy tool that you may or may not be aware of is the wine aroma wheel. Now, one of the main things to keep in mind when you're tasting wine is you'll ask somebody, do you like it? Yes, I like it, they say. Ask them why, and they kind of go, well, I just like what I like. And the conversation kind of dead ends there. Well, this aroma wheel is a great way to take it to the next level. If someone says they get fruit in the wine, you can simply ask them, oh, what kind of fruit? Is it berry? Is it tree fruit? Is it some other? Is it citrus fruit? And then we're getting somewhere. Once you get into tree fruit, what does that mean? Well, is it peach, apple? What kind of apple? Green apple or white peach? And so it breaks down from there. So it's not a real intellectual exercise. It just helps to start the conversation and give you a language to describe each of these wines and possibly what you're really tasting or what the wine evokes in your taste memory. Okay, so the Wine Aroma Wheel by Dr. Ann Noble. She was a food scientist and winemaker at UC Davis. Let's go ahead and open the Girls Are Meaner. This is the Gewürztraminer. And this is a wine traditionally from the Alsace region of France near the German border, right? And you're going to say, why is he opening this capsule like that? This is a sommelier's trick. They always open below that ridge in the bottle. The reason being, you don't want to come up here and just pull the top of that capsule off because liquid could get between the capsule and the bottle. And if it's not poured all immediately, that might lend itself to spoilage. So what we want to do is we'll cut below that lip. Okay? Good enough. And then we'll place that corkscrew right in the center of the cork and go ahead and put it in there. Do not go all the way through the cork if you can help it. I like this tool. It's a waiter's wine tool, and it's very handy, very effective, and very simple. Simple is good. You might want to think in some cartoons where they smell the cork. I never smell the cork, but you might want to inspect the cork for signs of spoilage or leakage. This is an amalgamated cork, which is a fairly high-quality amalgamated cork. It is another way to tell wine quality. If a winemaker is really serious or has a serious wine or wine meant for aging, the cork might be longer, and that allows a more measured amount of oxygen to contact the wine. But this wine was made early, and it's made to be consumed fairly early in its life. So that's the kind of wine it is. Let's go ahead and pour a bit of it, see what it looks like. And the first thing you want to do is hold it up to the light, check the clarity. The other thing is you might bend it in the glass and look around the rim of the liquid. This wine has a straw color to it. And you might try this trick. And the reason I'm doing that, and it's not to be a snob, is to coat the inside of that glass with the liquid so you can get a good take on what the aromas are. Okay? Now I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Amanda Skidmore, to come and actually taste the wine and give us some of her impressions of this Gewürztraminer.
It does smell very...
Does it smell reductive?
A little bit, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was good.
Okay. So why was it good?
It's a little bit sweeter. It's pretty smooth. I'm usually used to wines being a little bit more tangy.
A more crisp acidity?
Yeah, but this one was really smooth and really sweet, which I like because I'm not used to really bitter.
Okay. Do you get any fruit?
Yes, for sure. There's a lot of fruit. I'm pretty bad at this. Maybe something a little bit more citrusy.
Okay, you're getting a citrus note. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Should I not be getting a citrus note?
No, no. Actually, that's in some description of Gewürztraminer.
Okay, probably more in that kind of like citrusy tropical fruit.
Tropical fruit, mango.
Yep, in this portion.
Nice.
That's kind of what I'm getting from this one.
So, Amanda, what would we pair this wine with as far as food?
I guess because this one is sweeter, I'd want to pair it with something saltier.
That makes sense. I'm also going to branch out and say that since it's got a good amount of sweetness level to it, that it would work well with some of our New Mexico spicier dishes. Not heavy spicy.
Yeah. It would help to balance that out.
Right.
I could see it going with a really spicy or really sweet, because it is so sweet, I could see it going with a really spicy dish.
So Pozzoli or possibly carne adobada, this would be a good opening wine for both of those dishes. Okay, let's just make a comment about the glasses before we proceed with the tasting. So you notice that we poured the white wine in this tulip-shaped glass, and that's really more ideal for white wines because this tulip shape is going to concentrate those aromas so you can get a good smell of the wine. Aroma is a large component of white wine, so especially in something that's considered an aromatic white, such as Gewürztraminer. Now, in a more neutral white, especially a Chardonnay that is barrel-aged and has gone through full malolactic fermentation, you might want to try a more bowl-shaped glass like this. This is made by the company Riedel, and it's a pretty expensive glass. It's quite thin, and it's especially made for Chardonnay, and that will allow that oak aroma to air out. Most of the time, those oaked Chardonnays are somewhat aged, so you do have to give it more oxygen before you drink it in an ideal situation. So that's a Chardonnay glass. Having said that, with that bowl shape, the bowl shape in general is for red wine, and this is a red wine glass. And again, that bowl shape would allow that wine to be aerated and before you drink it, and then you can smell of it and go ahead and drink that red wine. Okay, so it's tulip-shaped glass for white, more bowl shape for red, but either one will work actually. So let's move into some red wines. We'll start with lighter reds and then move to a heavier red. So today we have Sangiovese, which is an Italian varietal, famously grown in Tuscany as the primary component of Chianti style wines. This one's grown near Deming by Paolo and Marco D'Andrea of the Luna Rossa winery. So let's give it a try. The thing to notice about Sangiovese or any European Vitis vinifera grape, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc, Merlot, Pinot Noir, all those are Vitis vinifera. And when you pour that in a glass, this is a 2017, so again, it's 3 years old. That's our rule of thumb for red wines. You'll notice that it has a red garnet color. And we're going to open a wine in just a moment that doesn't have that red garnet color. It has more of a purple hue to it. But this wine has that red garnet color. And if it has some age on it, you simply can do this number, turn it on its edge like so, and look at the perimeter of that wine puddle, if you will. And if it has a brown hue to it, it means it has some age to it. having been exposed to some oxygen. And that's not a bad thing at all. It might be a good thing, especially if the wine was rather tannic when it was harvested and bottled. So with this age, and this wine has interacted with some oak. I know that Paulo and Marco like to age in oak, and so that's really complementary to this wine. So now I'm going to again lean on my colleague to actually taste the wine and give us her impressions.
So I really like the color on this one. Like you said, it's very like ruby red.
Ruby red.
Which is just pretty, but I do see like, I know you flipped it over to like see the background a little bit better, but I do kind of see that brown.
And you can put it at an angle.
Okay.
And
yeah.
see, and around that edge is where the tail will be told.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really cool to see.
So you know that wine has some age, even if you haven't seen the bottle.
Exactly. Right. Because I didn't read it until you handed it to me.
Oh, okay.
So.
Cool.
There we go.
All right.
From a smell, it smells like it's going to be a little bit more bitter.
Oh, wow.
At least I'm getting a bitter.
So maybe you're already sensing the tannins that it contains.
Okay.
And Sangiovese is notorious. It can be quite tannic.
Okay.
But,
so something maybe from just the smell, there's some fruitiness there.
Oh, wow.
But maybe a little bit more woodsy or oaky-ish.
Okay. And that makes sense. The Paulo likes to age quite a lengthy time in oak.
Okay, yeah.
Both neutral and some new oak.
Okay, I definitely smell that now. Okay. This one's a little bit drier, and you can still kind of taste it for a little bit after you've swallowed it.
Okay, so Amanda brings up the good point, and that's a finish. And so 0 to 15 seconds after you swallow, short finish. 15 to 30 seconds, we're going to call that medium. And if you're still tasting that wine after 30 seconds or so, we're getting into a longer finish.
I would say this one definitely has a much longer finish than the first one that we tried.
Interesting.
And that it's not nearly as fruity. It's definitely got more of those tannins in it.
Okay.
Yeah, if I had to put it on the chart, I would put it more in the chemically tasting family for me.
Okay.
But that's maybe my palate versus.
Okay.
Probably something more in that like sulfury. I get a little bit of the fruit, but I'm getting more of that chemical taste. Okay, so this wine has been in bottle, you got to remember, for a couple years now. So you might want to really give it a good swirl, and as a matter of fact, you might want it to sit there for as long as 15 minutes before it really is going to present what's meant to be seen and tasted. So we're rushing this a bit by because there's still some fruitiness there.
Great. And so some of that reductiveness will blow off. And that's typical of a lot of Italian wines, including both the Barolo style and the Brunello. So this is pretty classic Italian-style winemaking. And it's tell me about the acidity.
It's definitely more acidic, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. And I can kind of feel that burn like in the back of your throat once you've like swallowed it. And it kind of does stay there for a good 30 seconds or so, at least for me.
Uh-huh. Does it make your mouth water at all?
Yeah, I could use some water to go with it.
Okay, and so that's when you're going to take another bite of food, preferably a pasta dish, a red sauce dish, and then that's the beauty of the wine and food combination. What's going to happen is you're going to salivate, eat some more food, another sip of wine, more food, and pretty soon you're having a good time.
Yeah, because this definitely had like that dry, more acidic, tanniny.
Okay, let's move on. And this is the Chamberson grape, which is a hybrid. And again, it was released in the 1960s. It's grown in Europe as a blender, but in this country, it's grown and vented on its own. And one of the homegrown wineries here in Albuquerque, Sean Sheehan's winery, has done a nice job with Chamberson. So let's go ahead and pour it up. Okay. So this is actually a 2018 model of the Chamberson, and it's quite a bit darker than Sangiovese. If you look closely, it does have a purple hue. It's not as pronounced as typically hybrid wines are, but it's there. And so that's in the glass, getting a little oxygen. And I'm going to, again, turn this over to my colleague, Amanda Skidmore, and see what Amanda perceives therein.
Yeah, so this one definitely looks a little bit more grape juicy color.
Grape juicy, nice.
Colored.
Nice
I haven't smelled it yet. But...
Yeah, like Welch's grape juice, right? Because that's a native grape. It's not Vitis vinifera. So it has more akin to that than it does the vinifera parent.
Yeah, it definitely looks like straight grape juice from its color.
Nice.
Okay, this one I think I also smell the tannins on. So it seems a little astringent-y, right?
You're preparing for that, are you?
In my brain, that's kind of what I'm going for, is that it's going to be more bitter as we get darker.
I think, Amanda, you might be picking up the oak.
Okay.
That's giving you that.
Okay, I can see it kind of being a little woodsy.
Okay.
But it doesn't have nearly the pungency as that last one we tried.
Okay. And typically it won't.
Yep. Okay, that one is a little bit sour.
You get a sour note.
I get a little bit of a sour note to it.
Okay.
But there's still some fruitiness there.
Nice fruitiness.
Yeah, I can definitely see wanting to have this with something that would be a little bit heavier, like a steak or a meat dish.
Yeah, I was going for something grilled, maybe even a hamburger.
Ooh, yeah. I can
Okay.
see it going well with something that would have like that char grilled, like off the grill
Yeah,
taste.
yeah. Okay, nice.
It's kind of where we were going to go with it.
How about the fruit? If you had to pick a fruit.
Off of the list here, if I had to pick a fruit, maybe a little bit more in the tree fruity family.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Maybe. It's not sweet like a tree fruit. It's
Would
more
you say something
sour.
like a plum?
Yeah.
Prune, perhaps?
Yeah, something a little bit more tangy.
Darker.
Yeah,
Little
definitely not like apple crisp or something
Gotcha.
like that, but something that would be cherry, currant, somewhere in there.
Like that. Nice.
Really dark fruit. Mm-hmm. And this one doesn't stay in your mouth quite as long.
So the finish is a little short, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems to be. It seems to be right after that, like 10 to 15 second mark. There's not a whole lot that just stays.
Nice. Just a word about cork. This particular cork is amalgamated cork, and it's made by just little bits of cork with proprietary polymers that hold those bits of cork together. It's a very stable cork, and it's very not prone to spoilage or TCA contamination. So it's a very stable material. Having said that, it's typically lower cost than a natural cork, and therefore it's used on wines that are to be consumed fairly early. Okay, so that's the amalgamated cork. This is a natural cork. It's a little bit longer, and it's a pretty good indicator that the winemaker was wanting this wine to be laid down or to age for a certain period of time before consumption. So they invested a little bit more in the cork per se. The cork's a little longer, and so that's a natural cork. Okay, there's really no one's better than the other. They just have different applications. So this is a traditional capsule of sorts. It's a little heavier metal, and so that's going to give you a clue right away that this is a wine that's probably meant to be laid down, probably has some bottle potential. In other words, it can age prior to drinking. And pour our Casa Rodenia 1629 red blend with Tempranillo, Syrah, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Alcohol content right at 13%. Know this about alcohol content. It can be 1.5 points higher or 1.5 points lower. The TTB gives you a window on when you put that on the label. So, having said that, let's go ahead and pour. Beautiful color, nice dark, rich. And again, we're going to tilt it and look to see how much age is on this wine. I'm still getting a pretty ruby edge to that wine puddle, so I would say this wine hasn't been in the bottle all that long, okay? So again, I'm going to defer to Amanda, and she's on a roll here today. So let's see what she thinks of our Casa Rodenia, which is possibly our heaviest wine in this lineup.
So this one's going to be a little bit heavier, and its heaviness based on color too. Like the darker it is, the heavier it's going to be.
Typically, they're correlated. I don't
Okay.
know for real, because some Pinots can be pretty light.
Yeah, this one has. It's a really pretty color, for sure.
Okay, so okay.
It does seem to be a little bit more red pink around
Nice.
the edge. So maybe smelling the oak.
You're still
I
getting
think so. I think I'm still getting a good
dose
oakiness
of
to it.
oak. Nice.
And maybe that's just the sense that I pick out.
Okay, I will tell you this about the oak. If you get a vanilla note, it was probably American oak.
Okay.
More spice box is probably French oak.
And you can tell that from just the smell, or
Both the
Okay.
smell and the taste. Now,
it smells spicy to me.
okay, so
I'm just
traditionally in Spain, the Tempranillo producers use American oak. For whatever reason, that's been their tradition. Here recently they've gone to French oak, but for some reason the Spanish always preferred American oak.
Okay. So then it should be more vanilla-y.
It should be, but it doesn't have to be.
Oh, getting some of that oakiness.
Okay.
That one feels heavy.
Has more weight.
Has more weight in your mouth, and then it was also pretty smooth, which kind of surprises me since the other ones have been a little bit more tangy, that this is going to be a little bit more smooth.
Okay, so the acidity level is a little bit less. Possibly if we had a pH meter, the pH would be closer to 4 than it is to 3.
Right. And I'm maybe getting some more of those like florally hints
wow.
to it, I would think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So just by the tone and tenor of your comments, I'm going to say this wine is more complex.
Yes, there's more like going on than there has been with some of the other ones.
Okay.
So it does kind of tend to last a little bit. I would say it's a little on the longer side
Longer finish?
for the finish, but
out of all of them, I do like this one. I think the first one we tried was my favorite, but I think this would be the second favorite so far.
Nice. Now, as we let it evolve and open for just a moment while I talk to you, Amanda, I'm gonna guess this wine's gonna pair really well with an intense beef tenderloin, a rack of lamb, something like that.
Something really savory.
Savory and more intense and a heavier food overall.
Yeah.
Okay,
I want like mashed potatoes and like a really good steak or a really well like savory meat dish.
Gotcha.
For sure.
How about if we had some New Mexican elk?
Yeah, elk would be great.
Okay, nice. All right.
Something really savory and heavy.
Great.
I think it would pair well.
I want you to do one more exercise before
Okay.
we leave this wine. When you take a sip, note the front, the mid, and the back palate,
Okay.
and see if which of those points are any of them or all of them that it hits for you.
I feel like it kind of hits kind of towards the middle, but then the back really
Nice.
heavy.
Nice.
So it's definitely more like in the back of my mouth,
So
and it
smooth
does
and-
kind of give you that like saliva. You want to eat food after this
Excellent.
type feel.
Excellent.
Okay, so our final wine is when we get to the dessert course, and really the only overarching thing to remember is the dessert wine should be sweeter than the dessert. Otherwise, if it's the reverse, then the wine will taste flat and flabby. Okay, we don't want that to happen. Now, this is a late harvest Riesling. Riesling has crisp acidity, and so it was allowed to dry on the vine, harvested late, and so it also has heightened sweetness. It's a cool thing to remember that glucose and fructose are two of the sugars in grape juice. And when you stop the fermentation, you arrest it, the glucose has been fermented out. The fructose is the sweetened sugar that remains, and it's a fruitier sugar. Therefore, you get this added dimension to a properly made dessert wine that you don't get if you just add cane sugar to the matrix. Okay? So having said that, this late harvest Riesling from Vivac Winery near Taos, let's let Amanda taste this wine and see how she might pair that up.
So this one has a 12% alcohol content to it, and we were just talking about how it's a little bit more sticky to the touch than some of the other ones. Looking at the color, it's got a really nice like apple juicy
Straw color?
straw color to it. It's appealing. I mean, it looks very
Right.
very fresh. By smelling it, it does kind of have that little bit more of a unctuous.
Okay.
Is that what we were saying?
Unctuous?
Unctuous.
Is it viscous?
Viscous. It's,
Not quite syrup, but hinting at it.
okay. Yeah, it's got a very like thick
Honey?
or honey type odor. It doesn't have that oakiness that the other ones had.
And that perfect sense. It hasn't, these wines typically are not put in barrel at all.
Okay. It looks sweeter
Okay.
than the other ones.
Fair enough.
I don't know. But it does kind of have that fermented fruit smell to it.
Okay.
So it does have a very fruity smell. Tasting it, it definitely starts off with that sweet and then has that acidity kind of following it.
Great.
So I can kind of see where it would be really good with maybe, something heavier dessert-wise, like a cheesecake or a pie maybe.
Gotcha.
Something that wouldn't be like super, super sugary, but something that
Okay.
needed some balancing.
Okay,
So.
nice.
This one kind of hits a little bit more towards the front of your mouth, I think,
Bigger back.
than it does towards the back. Although, I'd say it's got a minimum or a medium
Finish.
to it. So
Right.
a little bit more of that medium finish.
Mhm.
I really like that one. That one's good.
How about the fruit, Amanda? Other, we mentioned honey.
Yeah. I would say that this one falls closer to that tree fruit, tropical fruit.
Tropical.
Kind of like
Mango.
mango-y.
Gotcha. Guava, possibly?
Guava, for sure. A lot sweeter, and definitely not that artificial sugar flavor. This definitely tastes like a really ripe fruit.
Do you get any pineapple?
Mm,
And I'm suggesting things, obviously, but pineapple has been noted in Rieslings.
I'm not getting pineapple as much as that, like, just really intense sugary taste.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I really like that one. It is pretty smooth, although there is a little bit of a bite afterwards. Not as bitey as some of the ones that we've had, but all in all, I thought this one was really good.
Okay, so just a final statement. Dr. Skidmore is not a sommelier, and nor am I. And that's the point of this tasting, is simply to find some things that you like to pair with the foods that you like. And New Mexico wines are there for you. And I will say this, I will give them a lot of credit. Wine, of all the craft beverages, is the most agriculturally oriented one. It's dependent on the climate where you're at, the soil, and your growing conditions. So, and it's not something you can bring in from out of state. or any of those things. So it's a very agriculturally rooted local business, and I encourage you to support all the New Mexico wineries during this holiday season. And viva vino.